Hello everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at Equatio for math quizzes in Google Forms. So we all know that creating some math problems can be kind of tricky, especially when you need to make different shapes or formulas, or when you're using different variables, or you have to draw some funky symbols. It can be kind of tricky to draw out all that stuff, especially when you want to use a Google form and have a quiz or assignment be auto-graded for you. Luckily, we have Equatio, which is a Google Chrome extension, and luckily they just made it free for teachers. So if you come to this website up here, so texthelp.com/free for teachers, this will take you over to a form to fill out. If we scroll down to the bottom here, that you can get Equatio, or you can also get the Read and Write extension, which we're not going to talk about in this video, but you can get either one or both of those extensions, and you just fill out this little form here and it'll get you the Equatio extension, the premium version, that is. And there's a lot of good stuff in that extension. Alright, so once you have that all installed and you have the premium version, you'll have the icon found up here in the top right corner, and when you click on it, when you're in a Google form, it'll kind of have different things that pop up here, but this is what you'll see when you're inside of a Google form. Another thing you'll notice when you are in a Google form and you have the Equatio extension installed and you have the premium version, you'll have these little blue buttons over here on the side, and they'll be next to each one of the fields that you can fill something in. So it can be the question prompt, or it can also be the responses if you're doing like a multiple choice question. So let me take you real quick through this little Google form here. And first thing is, I just set this as a regular Google form quiz. So I came into its settings and I went into quizzes and made it a quiz, and then I set the point values and the answer key for my questions here. That's all normal stuff. We don't need to have Equatio for that. But where Equatio comes in here is when we can have these nice pictures come in, or we can have some formulas and kind of those little funky symbols like I was talking about before come in, and just have a nice easy way to put those things into an auto-grading quiz. So in this first question here, this one's just a straight up multiple choice, and this picture I made with Equatio. And let's say in a math class we're talking about like translation or dilation or rotation, that sort of thing. We're talking about how shapes can move, and I can make this little picture here. If I click on the little blue Equatio icon, notice the toolbar at the bottom will open up, and what we'll do to make our own custom picture here is we'll go over to this little symbol here. It looks like the Equatio symbol that's inside of a cube, and we click on that. That'll open up what they call math space, and this is essentially just an open drawing area that you can put whatever you want on here. And essentially, all that I did to make this picture is I just used a couple of shapes and an arrow. And here we have our shapes button down here in the bottom, and there's a bunch to choose from. It gives you like a couple of the most common ones at the front here, but if you go under more shapes, there's a ton that you can choose from. There's just a bunch of choices, whether it's 2D or 3D shapes. So let's just say, for example, how about we take a cube here, and we'll go ahead and draw it. And that's all we have to do. And just like that, it behaves just like a normal picture. So I can rotate it if I need to. I can make it bigger or smaller, stretching it out. I can change the color up here in the top middle. So I can change the fill color to whatever color I want. You can change the background color to whatever I want for there too. Alright. And once I have a shape or picture that I like, then all I have to do is I can put it right into the Google form by coming up to this button way up in the top right. If you hover over it, and it says insert. So I'll go ahead and give that a click. And what it's doing is it's creating a picture out of the that drawing that I was making before. It'll take a few seconds for me. And then what it's going to do is drop it in. Oh, this one kind of had a little glitch there, but that's all right. So if this happens, it will just give you the URL, the direct URL that goes to that picture. Then we can just say continue and paste it in here. and my picture still comes up. All right. Normally, it'll just insert it right away. You won't have to do that copying and pasting of the URL. All right. This next question with this clock is the exact same thing I did before. The background picture of the clock itself was just was one of the shapes that's in that shape menu, and I just drew 2 arrows on top of it to practice analog clock time. Now we can do one a little bit more complicated, a little bit more higher level here. So again, I'm going to go and click on the little Equatio symbol here. And again, the toolbar will pop up at the bottom. And let me just run through these buttons down here along our toolbar. If you want more settings, you can click on this drop-up menu here. There's some more settings. We'll come back to this in just a second. Then if we go into the Equatio editor here, here's where you can just start typing out a math problem. If you go into LaTeX, LaTeX is like the math coding language, if that makes sense. If you're familiar with it, great. If not, you don't have to know it to be able to use Equatio here. Next one that I think is really useful here is this graphs button. So what you can do on this one is you can just start typing out a formula. So I'll just do y equals 2x plus 1. And as you can see, it drew that line, and I can even move the points. I'm sorry, I can change the points if I change the formula over here. I can change whether or not the line shows up, etc., etc. If I go under settings, here's where I can change the color. I can change if it's a dotted or solid line. I can change all the colors and all that fun stuff over there. I can have multiple lines on one graph here. So an easy application would be you write out a couple of different formulas, and then the question just asks, hey students, which one is the which formula points to the red line here, and then so on and so forth. So you can just have students kind of apply and practice learning slopes, for example. Once I have a graph drawn out that I like, I can come down here at the bottom and say Insert Graph. And this will do the same thing it did before, where it'll change it into a picture and it'll drop it into the Google form for me. If it does the same thing as it did before, where it did the same thing again. But that's okay. It still gives us the link, and we can just paste it in the by URL section, and it'll drop right in for us. And there we go. So now that is still there. Okay. Then we just go ahead and continue on. If we want to make the multiple choice response choices into some math as well, we can do the same thing. So let's just say, for example, we want to, instead of typing out our responses, I can show off another thing, which is our handwriting option down here. And what we can do here is we can actually just draw with our mouse here, or if you're on a touch screen, this is where it's really handy, you can write out the formula. So I think it was y equals 2x plus 1. You'll notice it pops up over here on the side, and I go ahead and insert that. And it does the same thing again. Every time you draw something or make anything in Equatio here, it's going to change it over into a picture file and drop it in to your form from there. Alright, and then I'll go ahead and insert this one. So if you need to go back and change a formula that you made, if you maybe if you messed up the chart or if you messed up the formula down here, unfortunately you would just kind of have to get rid of it completely and just make a new one from there. Alright, so let's add another question here. And maybe on this one we're going to do a different thing as well. So our next thing down here in the toolbar is speech input. So I'm going to go ahead and say, and just kind of announce a formula here. Y equals mx plus b. And let's try that again. 2 divided by 7. All right, and you can see it kind of comes in. It will stack on top of each other like that. Of course, this formula doesn't mean anything here. So when you put something in, make sure your cursor is left where you actually want it to be. All right, that one is a little bit hit or miss from what I've seen, as you can kind of tell. I think the handwriting thing is probably my favorite. Next thing down in the toolbar is Equatio Mobile. So if you want to get the app on your phone, you can also kind of do a lot of your drawing and everything on the mobile app, which is actually pretty handy. It functionally works the same, and you can just drop in your math that you create right into your Google form from there. Next, we have the math space, so we'll jump in here again, and I'll show you a couple more things that you can do in math space here. So first thing down here at the bottom, we have the same toolbar as before, but one thing I wanted to show you is if you go into the options menu and we come on down to space options, you can change your background style or color. So if you wanted to have the little grid square, you can do that, or change the color of it. You can also show printing guides. So if you are trying to create like a math worksheet that's going to be printed out, this is a real good way to go. You don't have to use Google Forms in conjunction with this. This will just come in with Equatio as well. But you can show the print guides. You can show the page size. So if you're just printing on regular paper, just letter US will work. And then you can choose your page orientation, whether it's landscape or portrait. And as you can see, we kind of have this little light purple shading. So anything that's in that section will print on a page. So you can just start making all of your equations and problems and everything in there. All right, and then we'll head over into the freehand drawing here, and this one's pretty self-explanatory. So of course you can just start kind of drawing whatever you need from there. So if it's more of a pain to be able to find the right symbol or draw the thing or type out the more complicated problem, sometimes it's just a little bit easier to draw something like that, and it'll obviously have it just like that. Now, the nice thing too is all that same stuff down here at the bottom is still here. So something like this will still be something like your handwriting tool is still here for you. One thing I didn't show back over here is there's also a screenshot recorder, which is pretty nifty as well. And if you kind of take a selective screenshot of something, it'll find that same formula or whatever it is, and it'll give you a readout, and you can even take some more options and copy it to LaTeX or copy it right into Equatio and then just use it. So even if it's something you found out like on another website or something, you can just screenshot it essentially and then copy it and throw it right into Equatio for you. I just wanted to show that one real quick. All right, and that was some freehand drawing, and then we'll head over into shapes again. Like I said before, there's a ton of stuff in here. You can even do a search as well. And the nice thing is, you don't have to match the words exactly as they're shown. So, like for example, here there are some coins, but you don't notice. When I was in the search menu here, I searched for the word money. Even though these things are labeled as coins, they still showed up. So you don't have to have the exact right word, which is very handy. And then once you have something in here, in this case we have all these coins. Each one is just an individual shape. Of course I can just resize them, move them, whatever I need to do from there. And then finally our last thing over here, we have smart shapes, which are just kind of like they sound. They're more like interactive sections or interactive pieces here. And when you open up one of the smart shapes, over here on the far right side we have this toolbar that comes up, and we can change up how many segments in this example that we have, how many shaded segments we have, if we're going to do it clockwise or not, all that fun stuff. And there's a pretty good number of these rather, and we can even put in like a protractor, and we can include what the graduation's gonna be, all that fun stuff. So there's a pretty good number of those in here. So we have a number line and a grid and a protractor and a fraction bar, etc., etc. And you can kind of feel free to play with any of these things because, again, in the teacher version here, you get all the premium stuff for free, which is really cool. All right, and even though my page here is kind of a mishmash, we can still, just like we did before, come up to the top right and press that insert button. And that's going to drop it into our Google form, just like before. And you can kind of tell the theme here for how we're going. And it'll drop it in. And then once we have our whole quiz built out, then we will just send out the quiz to our students just like normal. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this last image in here. It's kind of a mishmash of nothingness there, but that's all right. And the nice thing too is when students go in to go and do this quiz, all these things that we created in Equatio are going to be here for them. They're just, again, they just show up as pictures. Students are able to install the Equatio add-on themselves. They would just have the base version. So if they really needed to type something like if they needed to type a formula like this from scratch, it would be a little trickier. I think the best way to use Equatio is if a teacher is creating a simple multiple choice or short answer math quiz in Google Forms here. Alright, so that brings us down to the end of the video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.